Welcome to iteration 4 of the CS160 programming tutorial. In this iteration, we're going to extend the code we wrote for iteration 3 to address some of the additional functional requirements that relate to input. Iteration 4 objectives include adding Java code to the main class to satisfy functional requirement number 3. That requirement is that the program must prompt for and read the annual percentage rate, or APR, of the credit card as shown below. We're also going to add Java code to the main class to satisfy functional requirement number 4, which is that the program must prompt for and read the credit card balance as shown below. We're also going to ensure that the variable names we introduce to hold the APR and the credit card balance satisfy technical requirement number 3. And that requirement reads in part, to aid in matching program logic to the credit card equation, the program must declare variables with the name shown in Figure 1 to hold the program's input data and calculated results. And to adhere to Java naming conventions, use lowercase n for uppercase n and lowercase APR for uppercase APR. We're also going to continue our practice of adding debug code to ensure that the values we read in are the ones we think we've read in. So we're going to add a couple statements to display the APR and credit card balance. Finally, we're going to run the program and verify that the output produced by that new debug code contains the APR and credit card balance values that we input. With respect to code design for iteration number 4, to address the functional requirement number 3, we'd first note that the annual percentage rate is a percent. And by looking at the two sample runs, we know it's a percent that's represented as a decimal value that's in the range between 0 and 100. And decimal values are typically represented in Java as doubles. So we're going to declare a double variable to hold the APR. And in order to satisfy technical requirement number 3, we're going to name that variable lowercase APR. We'll produce an output statement to generate the prompt that lets the user know that the APR is the desired input. And we'll have an input statement that will read that double value. To address functional requirement number 4, we first realize that the credit card balance is a dollar amount. Again, that's an amount with a decimal point, and we'll need another double variable just like for the APR to hold that credit card balance. Since we're not going to be doing any error checking, we'll assume that dollar amount is input without the dollar sign and without any commas. We must name that variable B as directed by technical requirement number 3. I would note, we'll take a quick look at the equation. Here's the equation in Figure 1. And you'll notice in that equation, B here represents the credit card balance. Then we'll need an output statement to generate the necessary prompt, and an input statement, just like for the code for requirement 3, to read the double value. Finally, we'll add a couple of output statements to display the APR and credit card balance. All right, let's switch over to our code and begin adding the Java required to satisfy functional requirements 3 and 4. The first thing we'll do is we'll add declarations for the APR and credit card balance. And since we already have declarations associated with the name, we'll add those underneath. So we'll do double APR, and we'll use double B. Now, since APR is an abbreviation and B is, a single letter, who knows what that really means, we're also going to add some comments here. So we'll say that this holds the annual percentage rate of the credit card. And B, that holds the credit card balance. Okay, very simple. The next thing we'll do is we will add code that solicits and reads the APR. And we'll notice that our algorithm contains a step for that. So it's very easy to discern that the code we need to read the APR belongs right there. So for the prompt, we will use a print method. And again, we'll go back to our assignment, and I'm going to take the prompt right from there, copy and paste it in, and then we're going to use, to read a double, of course, from the keyboard, we're going to use next double, and we'll let Eclipse put that in for us. And we're going to take the double that's returned and put it into our variable APR. Similarly, we notice that the next step in our algorithm here is to solicit and read the credit card balance. So we'll do that. And I'm just going to do this in a very similar way as I just did the APR. Go back out. We'll pick up the prompt. Copy and paste that in there. And then we'll need another invocation of next double. And this time, we'll place that value into B. Okay, now we've created the code to solicit and input values for APR and B. Now we'll add some debug code right after that. To display those values. And I'll just go up here and borrow our debug code for the name, put it here, and just replace the arguments. One for APR and one for B. Okay, now that we've added all our code, we're going to test it. And notice one thing that I didn't do. I didn't delete the debug code for the name. And the reason I didn't delete it is sometimes when we add code to address additional functionality, we inadvertently introduce errors into code that worked before. So I just want to ensure that the new code I added hadn't introduced such an error. All right, so let's do carry lots of debt. And there's a debug code for that. And then the APR, the credit card. Well, I think what we should probably do for the first test here is go down and just use the values from the example. So we can use 13.65 in 2013. All right, so 13.65 for the APR and 2013. I would notice that as far as Java is concerned, entering 2013 is acceptable as a double value. So that should be accepted by the code that reads the double. And there it is. Notice on output, since it's a double value is always displayed with at least one decimal digit. So even though we enter 2013, we should expect to see 2013 period 0. Of course, I'm not convinced that my code's correct yet, so let's run it again. And let's use some values down here from the sample runs. Let's go down here for the second sample run. And let's use 10.72 and 5001.79. Okay. And for this, I'm just going to use A, B, C. 10.72. And my memory's not that great, so I'm going to go back and 5001.79. Okay, 5001.79. And notice in entering the dollar value, I do not enter the comma. So there we go. 10.72, 5001.79. I'm going to run this one more time just to make sure that it accepts values that are a little closer to 0. So let's do that. And let's say I only have 50 cents left to pay on my credit card balance. Okay, very good. I would notice here too that it doesn't print the trailing 0. And that's normal. If we're not going to use formatted output here, and the print line statement certainly doesn't, then we leave it up to the Java method to determine what the display is going to look like. You'll see in future iterations we are required to control the output display of our double variables, and we will do so. So there we have it. We've now addressed additional requirements 3 and 4.